Hi, this is Adam Zammit, founder and CEO of Peer Group Media, a music, entertainment and marketing business.
Welcome to Adam. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I noticed you studied drama at university. I'm interested if this is where your kind of passion for creativity began.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get involved with a theatre for young people by young people called Shopfront Theatre in Carlton in Sydney when I was 11. And it's an incredible place, so you let young people of all ages up to about 21 come along and get involved in the idea development, script writing, marketing, production. We used to screen print posters, design the costumes, produce the plays, play a role in lighting, direction, and that all-encompassing involvement in the entire process of creating theatre for me was the foundation of understanding the opportunities of being able to both produce outcomes, without necessarily understanding at the time any one of the skills involved. So it was an early confidence boost for me in being involved in, I think, creative development.
And do you think this helps separate you now as a business leader, that creative background?
Yeah, I think the fact that I don't consider myself to be a creative person any more than I consider myself to be a business person, probably the blurring of the lines between the two have come to form the foundation of the business that I now have. That being, the enjoyment in finding where the line between art and commerce exists and playing around with the opportunities there.
Why has this become a ruling passion for you in your life? Why are you so passionate about merging those two things?
Well, probably a fundamental lack of ability in both. Probably because I'm neither incredibly good actor when I was trying to do it or good musician, and neither am I probably necessarily the greatest businessman. And in all seriousness, it is a bit about that. I think it's about having, I've got great empathy and passions for both, driven by a highly pragmatic approach to outcomes. I think I found myself an excellent conduit between the creative minds and the business opportunities. Your
first endeavour was Revolver magazine. I'm wondering if there were any lessons or mistakes that you sought to leave behind when you were establishing the brand?
Well, funny enough, it's a rolling story. I started off as a sales rep on a magazine similar to Revolver called Beat, with a guy called Rob who still owns Beat magazine in Melbourne, a number of titles. I then left Rob and started Revolver magazine, and it wasn't until my business partner Revolver hit some significant financial issues that we evolved Revolver into Bragg. So I guess the lessons are probably that there's an endless recurrence of relationships when you hang around a lot in a certain industry or within a business community, that opportunities come and go and they emerge out of other opportunities, and the need to maintain, I guess, some sense of continuity, good relationships, and improve always on the quality of the opportunities that keep coming, even if they're coming from the same point or the same area of business. For me, it was a pretty key one.
Would you say that relationships then are crucial and core to your business?
I think they're crucial and core to everything. I think some people are lucky enough to be born into or come out of universities or high school situations where business relationships come from foundation friendships. They might come from existing family relationships, or they might be inherent in the tertiary education process. Either way, relationships should be considered to be crucial no matter what level they're at. I've had staff members work for me who are now business competitors, and those relationships are important now at this stage of them as they were when these people were interns. I've had competitors in business who have eventually come to work for me. I've been an employee of someone who's now a business partner. So relationships are in a permanent state of evolution, and I think to understand and remain, I think, gentle but determined in the way you develop those relationships, I think is the best way to have the broadest possible opportunities at all the times and all the development stages of your career.
Do you have anyone who you bounce ideas off with?
Probably not enough. Probably at this stage of my career I am starting to develop some more sympathetic relationships with other business people of my age, and probably have lacked, I think, probably some older, senior levels of influence in my development. I don't have any regret or concern for having not had that, because I think what it's really forced me to do, I've been managing staff since I was 21, has been to trust the intuition on significant business decisions, knowing that I think fundamentally it's less about the results of my decisions, but my ability to keep making them that builds me as a better operator. Influence, I think, and advice and direction is a wonderful thing to have, but it doesn't do anything necessarily to build the raw nerve of intuitive gut instinct.
Can you give us some examples of when you've really trusted your gut and it's turned out to be, right?
Well, as soon as I think of the right decisions, I immediately think of the wrong ones. The wrong ones are probably the better ones to look at for me. I think because I'm making decisions on a daily basis all the time. I think my strongest, best decision was to step out of my first and real only employment under the first magazine I worked for, and to leave and start something on my own. I think that what I was reacting to there was a long-held, never to go away determination to run my own game, do my own thing. And I think reacting to that young enough, despite the inherent risk, was critical to me to be able to continue to make decisions along that same motivation.
So you're obviously really dynamic and creative and ambitious. Are these the only traits that are necessary for success, in your opinion?
Well, ambition's a funny one, because ambition always seems to speak of an understanding of where you're heading. And I haven't always had that. I would say I don't necessarily have that now in terms of a destination-driven, goal-driven mentality. I think the mixed dynamic nature of my businesses, the fact that I've got several business partners in several businesses within one building, I think the fact that the business is continually taking left-hand turns away from primary business goals to explore other opportunities, are a reflection of my ambition being more of a drive than necessarily a determined path. So I don't know how important ambition is in the sense that it speaks to outcomes that you want to achieve, but certainly you have to have some reason for getting out of bed in the morning. Entrepreneurial spirit is obviously born of any number of reasons for wanting to do things with a dynamic that's separate from the normal employment hierarchical trajectory of career development. What makes that up, though, varies very greatly for people.
So where does it come from for you? Where's your entrepreneur drive come from?
I think probably in the most honest sense, fear is a critical factor, I think, in early entrepreneurial development. Fear of what you can't achieve under the dictum of somebody else's direction, fear of what will happen if you don't follow those instincts first. I think my first moves were scrambly and arrogant, rather than necessarily kind of clear, conscious, well-planned sort of decisions. As I've grown older, I think that the reasons for me driving things on have come from the results of those other decisions. So loving working with staff on my terms, loving discovering new people that I can work with, getting to be involved in creative decision making that affects profitable outcomes. But in the first instance, they weren't what I was looking for. What I was looking for was an independence platform from which I think I intuitively thought other things might come that would be good for me to live within as a business person.
So if you could go back to when you were first starting out as your young 21-year-old self,
yeah,
what kind of advice would you give you then?
That's a really hard question, because it's obviously I want to talk towards the hindsight that I benefited from, but as a young 21-year-old, I think it would have been pretty hard to interrupt. I think that kind of raw energy that was coming out of me as a 21-year-old. I think the directionless ambition to be a part of something big, it would be hard to curate into a finer form of disciplined business operation. I think the only thing I find in working with younger staff is to continually to invite them to explore all the opportunities that may already exist, while asking them to be kind of I guess, emotionally intelligent enough to understand where the limitations are inherently in everything they do right now. I think I had enough of that at 21. I don't think the 21-year-old in me probably would have taken much more direction than that. God knows several people tried to give it to me on either the cautious level or otherwise. But I think the 21-year-old coming into my office now to see me about a job or to ask about their next opportunity is being asked the same question by me, which is simply, how big can you be and how broad do you want to go? And what's possible right now, rather than necessarily the goal-based question of where do you want to be in 5 years' time. What's within you right now that we're not utilising?
So are you the kind of boss that you'd want to have?
I think I am when it comes to giving rousing speeches like that, but I think when it comes to the crude, foul kind of lack of professional kind of etiquette that I've developed my general management style from, I'd probably say that depends on the person. I've been waiting for a class action for some time now, but no, I'm looking at the nature of our business is useful, creative. That helps a lot, But I've got to be careful not to become the Phil Dunphy of this business, where I'm sort of, riding around a razor scooter, kind of asking the team to come join me in the beanbags for a workshop, It's not really what I want to be. I think what I want in my staff to see me as is a true reflection of my story and my development, so that it tells them exactly what is possible and not possible within their own stories, depending on how they want to interpret it. I haven't taken myself off to courses in business management so I can create a structured, better defined version of what I am. I prefer my staff to interpret me raw and trust what comes out of my mouth every time is truly not out of a, how to manage the rising creative class textbook written by a Californian, professor, but something that's just really what I think from what I know, from what I've garnered, from what I've done.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.